Good evening to everyone, my dear friends who are listening on my two broadcasting channel on Facebook and YouTube. I would like to address you especially today in English because today in London there is a man called Alassane Dramane Ouattara, so-called president of the Ivorian Republic, who will address a message at Chatham House, London, concerning the political evolution of his country, Ivory Coast. I would like to give a very important alert about that man. Alassane Dramane Ouattara is a dangerous dictator, a satrap, a reptilian, and one of the most abject leaders of Africa today. I would like to explain you in very short terms and with precise examples who is Mr. Alassane Dramane Ouattara. Mr. Alassane Dramane Ouattara is, at the beginning of his life, a voltaic citizen who in 1989 appeared in Côte d'Ivoire, where he was chosen by President Félix Houphouët-Boigny as the Prime Minister of the Republic. He is one of the most important responsible of the destruction of Ivorian democracy in these years. Between 1990 and 1993, Mr. Ouattara was the most important prosecutor of liberties in Ivory Coast. He jailed all the direction of the opposition, especially in 1992, February, just because they were asking for civil liberties in the streets of Ivory Coast. Mr. Ouattara is author of the first coup d'etat in 1993, when he tried to, in fact, usurpate the function of President of the Republic against the President of the National Assembly and against the Constitution. Mr. Ouattara is responsible of organizing a coup d'etat in December 1999 against President Henri Konan Bédié's power and his success. General Gueye, who was supposed to organize that coup d'etat for Mr. Ouattara, tried to keep the power in the year 2000. And then, just after, Mr. Ouattara, through some militaries coming from his northern region and having the same ethnical roots with him, Mr. Ouattara organized in 2001. And in 2002, especially in September, he organized 2 more coups d'etat to reach to the oath. And Mr. Ouattara was, for 6 years, exiled out of Côte d'Ivoire with a warrant of international arrest. Mr. Ouattara finally, in 2005, obtained through negotiations in Pretoria with President Thabo Mbeki as mediator. He obtained the recognition of his Ivorian nationality and his eligibility to the presidential election of Côte d'Ivoire. To give you a summary, we can say that Mr. Ouattara has been fighting for quite 17 years between 1993 and 2010 to become the president of the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire. His main item, his main argument was that he has been excluded was that he was victim of discrimination, political discrimination in Ivory Coast. Mr. Ouattara, during his first mandate, had two very important allies. His allies were President Henri Konan Bédié of PDCI-RDA, a former president of the Republic, and Prime Minister Guillaume Soro, the chief of the Force Nouvelle, and who was for 5 years Prime Minister under President Gbagbo and under Mr. Ouattara himself. At the beginning of the second mandate of Mr. Ouattara at the head of the state, he decided to change the constitution, and he decided, in fact, to betray his allies. He decided to betray President Bédié. He decided to betray Prime Minister and President Soro, who was, since quite 2012, Speaker to the National Assembly. Having the project of keeping and capturing Ivorian state, Mr. Ouattara decided now to destroy all the liberties that Ivorian people had acquired since 1990 till today. Mr. Ouattara is now author of many violations of the Constitution, many violations of human rights. Mr. Ouattara is installing an atmosphere of terror in Ivory Coast. I will give some examples. Under Mr. Ouattara's Prime Minister's order, called Amadou Gon Coulibaly, many militants of the opposition parties have been assassinated in Côte d'Ivoire. This is the case of Noël Soro Cognon, killed by knife on July 7th of 2018. This is the case of Lansine Coulibaly, killed on October 14th, just because he was trying to obtain a very true and fair municipal election in Abobo. Mr. Ouattara is responsible of jailing parliamentarians. Today, there are 5 parliamentarians in jail. And Mr. Ouattara is author of one of the most terrible violations of the Constitution, because those parliamentarians were arrested without stopping first their parliamentarian immunity, which is protected and guaranteed by the Constitution. Mr. Ouattara arrests and jails the parliamentarian first, and then after, the National Assembly, without respecting the procedure, stop and destroy the immunity. This is unbelievable. Mr. Ouattara is responsible of jailing a parliamentarian for a tweet on Twitter, a tweet of Honorable Alain Michel Lobognon, where Alain Michel Lobognon was defending one of his colleagues, named Jacques Ehou. Mr. Ouattara is responsible of jailing many militants of opposition, Front Populaire Ivoirien, PDCI-RDA, and now GPS. Mr. Ouattara is responsible of using public funds like no other president of the Republic has been using them since that Ivorian Republic has been built. 500 million euro only for him every year in the national budget, which is equal to 300 milliards of CFA per year. Mr. Ouattara is responsible of one of the most important strategy of squandering and embezzlement in the public funds with his wife, with many men and women of his government. And Mr. Ouattara governs Ivory Coast with his family. His brother has been designed as Minister of Presidential Affairs. This is one of the most strange and ridiculous ministry in the African world, and I think through all the world. Mr. Ouattara is now responsible, in fact, of organizing through the country an atmosphere of war, of fear, of terror. And there are many civilian organizations who have denounced this atmosphere. The lawyers of Ivory Coast have publicly said that Mr. Ouattara is destroying justice. The most important magistrates of Ivory Coast have publicly said that they are no more free to judge equally Ivorians in the courts. And the Ivorian Christian Catholic Church has publicly affirmed that Mr. Ouattara was organizing a year of terror, of domination, because he was refusing to organize fair, transparent, equal presidential election. He is excluding his opponents in the process of democratic concurrency. He is now precisely controlling all the institutions of the republic with his ruling party. And Mr. Ouattara is author of the refusal of any kind of dialogue through the country. So there are many civilian organizations who denounced what Mr. Ouattara is doing in Côte d'Ivoire. And this is that Ouattara. It is that and this Ouattara who will be speaking today at Chatham House, London. Mr. Ouattara will be lying. He is a liar. Mr. Ouattara will be trying to present Ivory Coast like a paradise on earth. It is not a paradise. It is hell. Mr. Ouattara will try to say that he has given to that country the most important economical growth. This is false. Quite the half of the Ivorian population is under the level, the international level of poverty. 70 and quite 90% of the Ivorian people able to work are without work today. These are official statistics. I'm not inventing them. You have an appearance of success if you just look on public work and if you just look on that Abidjan show Mr. Ouattara gives. But if you enter in the country to see the condition of rural people, if you enter in the country to see the condition of students in schools, if you enter inside the country to see the condition of the middle class, if you enter inside the country to see how communities are living inside farms, are living in the campaign, and so on. If you enter in the realities of Ivory Coast, you will see that Mr. Ouattara has not been able to bring a fair, true, and very deep development to that country. So I had to denounce that man who will be talking today at Chatham House, London. I had to tell you and to prevent you, Anglophone-speaking people, that Mr. Ouattara is not a Democrat, he's not a Republican. Mr. Ouattara is not actor of progress. Mr. Ouattara is an enemy of freedom, an enemy of democracy, an enemy of justice, and a danger for Côte d'Ivoire. He is now leading Côte d'Ivoire to a new civil war, deporting people, judging them without any proof, accusing people, exiling Ivorians, organizing violences, using militias against his own people. Mr. Ouattara is, in fact, the most important factor of instability today in Ivory Coast. You have to know that, and I had to denounce that. That is why, after Mr. Ouattara's speech at Chatham House, we will be responding to him. in the coming days. And I personally, Professor Franklin Nyamsiwa Cameroon, will be in London to bring a serious and argumented, a serious and deep and pertinent response to his lies. We will be on all medias to give all the proofs that Mr. Ouattara is a liar. And we'll be talking to the Voice of America. I will be talking to BBC. I will be talking to all Anglophone world about who is Mr. Ouattara in the coming days. We can no more accept that Mr. Ouattara presents himself like what he is not and who he is not. He is the enemy of African democracy. He is the enemy of African freedom. He is the enemy of African growth and progress. And I will add a final example. The Western African countries are organizing themselves to have a currency, an autonomous currency for their economies. While they were organizing themselves to build that ECO, an autonomous Western African currency, Mr. Ouattara tried to introduce his tutors of France in the control of that currency one more time. So Mr. Ouattara is a vassal. He is working like a slave for the imperial French order in Western Africa. He is not, in fact, an African. He is the enemy of all Africans. And he has to be fought everywhere by all African true patriots, Democrats, Republicans. If you believe in Africa, you can't believe in Mr. Ouattara. If you want African progress, African growth, if you want Africans to be responsible of their continent, you can't walk and walk with Mr. Ouattara. If you want to see democracy in Ivory Coast, you can't support Mr. Ouattara. He has destroyed in less than 5 years all the most important civil liberties in Ivory Coast. The constitution is not respected, and he's trying to capture that state. So we need your help for truth. We need your help for justice. We need your help to share this message so that every English-speaking people through the world will know that Mr. Ouattara is a dictator and nothing else. This was my early morning message to the English-speaking people through the world, and I thank you very much to share this message about who Mr. Ouattara is and who is that person who will be talking to the Chatham House at London. The person who will be talking at Chatham House, London, is the enemy of Ivory Coast. He has to be fought because he is destroying all hope in Ivory Coast, and he is an enemy of African growth, of African liberties. So you English-speaking people, you people of London, who will be listening to that demon, to that satrap, to that reptilian, who is the civil servant of the imperial French order in Western Africa, don't believe him. Don't share his ideas, because he is the enemy of African peoples. He is, in fact, a liar. He is, in fact, a monster. And we have to show him under his true face. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. The struggle continues for liberties in Ivory Coast, for freedom through Africa, for true democracy. We will stand up everywhere for that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing this message.